All right, here we are, 100 TOEFL listening practice questions. This is designed to help you prepare for the TOEFL IBT. Now, these are a little bit different than the actual TOEFL test, so let me just really quickly explain a couple of the similarities and differences between this practice and the TOEFL IBT. So the first thing is that the answer explanations are in the PDF in the description below. We're going to give you the answer after each question, but if you want more of an explanation, make sure you download that PDF below. All right, this is what it'll look like on the TOEFL IBT when you listen. There'll be a difficult word shown so you can see what it's spelled like, and you'll see a bar at the bottom with the progress of the listening. Here we won't have a bar. The passages are shorter, they're only 1 to 3 minutes. And they will have some difficult vocabulary as well for you to see. On the TOEFL IBT, the question comes after the listening. You don't see the question until after the listening is finished. And that's the same thing for us here. You'll listen to a short passage, and then there will be a couple questions about that passage. So that's one of the differences, that there are shorter lectures, 1 to 3 minutes long. Another difference is that you only have 30 seconds per question. On test day, you're actually in control of your time. If you want to go fast, you can take 2 seconds to answer a question. If you want to go slow, you can take a minute. You only have a certain amount of time for the section, but you're in control of the time per question. Here, it's a YouTube video, so you just have 30 seconds. We're just giving you to answer the question. If you have to wait, sorry. If you need more time, just press pause. Okay. Next thing is that the questions appear after the passage, like I mentioned, but there's only 2 questions. On test day, there'll be 5 or 6 questions after a passage. For this video, just 2 after these short passages. Make sure you check the answer explanations in the PDF. Really important that you check your work. And also, you can take notes while you listen. Just like on the TOEFL IBT, you have a pencil and a piece of paper that you can use to take notes while you listen. 1 or 2 more things. The academic topics. So these passages are just academic topics. On TOEFL test day, the listening section will have conversations and lectures. Here we're only doing the lectures, only the academic stuff. And there's a bunch of different topics, so those are listed out here. Astronomy, history, anatomy, biology, psychology, sociology, economics, chemistry, physics. Bleh. On test day, you don't know what topic you're going to get. So it's good to practice with a bunch of different topics. Some of them you'll be better at than others. It's just how it works. All right, and one last thing is that there are a bunch of different question types. There's actually 8, and we mix them up between the passages here, so they're all mixed up throughout this practice. This is part 1, the first 50. I think it'll take about an hour, maybe a bit more, and I think that's it. All right, good luck, guys, and I'll see you at the end.
Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an anatomy class. Human movement includes not only actions at the joints of the body, but also the motion of individual organs and even individual cells. As you read these words, red and white blood cells are moving throughout your body, muscle cells are contracting and relaxing to maintain your posture and to focus your vision, and glands are secreting chemicals to regulate body functions. Your body is coordinating the action of entire muscle groups to enable you to move air into and out of your lungs, to push blood throughout your body, and to propel the food you've eaten through your digestive tract. Now, conscientiously, of course, you contract your skeletal muscles to move the bones of your skeleton to get from one place to another and to carry out all of the activities of your daily life. Question 1. What actions of human movement are made consciously? 2. What does the lecturer imply when she says this? As you read these words, red and white blood cells are moving throughout your body, muscle cells are contracting and relaxing to maintain your posture and to focus your vision, and glands are secreting chemicals to regulate body functions. Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an anatomy class. Okay, so German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen, born in 1845, died in 1923, was experimenting with electrical current when he discovered that a mysterious and invisible ray would pass through his flesh but leave an outline of his bones on a screen coated with a metal compound. Then, in 1895, Röntgen made the first durable record of the internal parts of a living human, an X-ray image, as it came to be called, of his wife's hand. Scientists around the world quickly began their own experiments with X-rays, and by 1900, X-rays were widely used to detect a variety of injuries and diseases. Okay, so in 1901, Röntgen was awarded the first Nobel Prize for Physics for his work in this field. Now, the X-ray is a form of high-energy electromagnetic radiation with a short wavelength capable of penetrating solids and ionizing gases. As they are used in medicine, X-rays are emitted from an X-ray machine and directed toward a specifically treated metallic plate placed behind the patient's body. Now, the beam of radiation results in darkening of the X-ray plate. X-rays are slightly impeded by soft tissues, which show up as gray on the X-ray plate, whereas hard tissues, such as bone, largely block the rays, producing a light-toned shadow. Thus, X-rays are best used to visualize hard body structures, such as teeth and bones. Now, like many forms of high-energy radiation, however, X-rays are capable of damaging cells and initiating changes that can lead to cancer. This danger of excessive exposure to X-rays was not fully appreciated for many years after their widespread use. Question: what are X-rays best used for? Why does the professor say this? This danger of excessive exposure to X-rays was not fully appreciated for many years after their widespread use. Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an anatomy class. Now, human anatomy is the scientific study of the body's structures. Some of these structures are very small and can only be observed and analyzed with the assistance of a microscope. Other larger structures can readily be seen, manipulated, measured, and weighed. The word anatomy comes from a Greek root that means to cut apart. Human anatomy was first studied by observing the exterior of the body and observing the wounds of soldiers and other injuries. But later, physicians were allowed to dissect bodies of the dead to augment their knowledge. Now, when a body is dissected, its structures are cut apart in order to observe their physical attributes and their relationships to one another. Dissection is still used in medical schools, anatomy courses, and in pathology labs. Question: what is the lecture mainly about? Why does the professor mention the Greek root of the word anatomy? Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an anatomy class. A human body consists of trillions of cells organized in a way that maintains distinct internal compartments. Now, these compartments keep body cells separated from external environmental threats and keep the cells moist and nourished. They also separate internal body fluids from the countless microorganisms that grow on body surfaces, including the lining of certain tracts or passageways. Now, the intestinal tract, for example, is home to even more bacteria cells than the total of all human cells in the body. Yet these bacteria are outside the body and cannot be allowed to circulate freely inside the body. Cells, for example, have a cell membrane, also referred to as the plasma membrane, that keeps the intracellular environment, the fluids and organelles, separate from the extracellular environment. Blood vessels keep blood inside a closed circulatory system, and nerves and muscles are wrapped in connective tissue sheaths that separate them from surrounding structures. In the chest and abdomen, a variety of internal membranes keep major organs, such as the lungs, heart, and kidneys, separate from others. Question: what is the topic of this lecture? Why does the professor talk about the intestinal tract? Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an anatomy class. Now, the position of the heart in the chest allows for individuals to apply an emergency technique known as cardiopulmonary resuscitation, commonly referred to as CPR, if the heart of a patient should stop. By applying pressure with the flat portion of one hand on the sternum, it is possible to manually compress the blood within the heart enough to push some of the blood within it into the major arteries. Now, this is particularly critical for the brain, as irreversible damage and death of neurons occur within minutes of loss of blood flow. Current standards call for compression of the chest at least 5 centimeters deep and at a rate of 100 compressions per minute. At this stage, the emphasis is on performing high-quality chest compressions rather than providing artificial respiration. CPR is generally performed until the patient regains heart activity or is declared dead by an experienced healthcare professional. Now, when performed by untrained individuals, CPR can result in broken ribs and can inflict additional severe damage on the patient. It is also possible, if the hands are placed too low, to manually drive the xiphoid process into the liver, a consequence that may prove fatal for the patient. Now, proper training is essential. This proven life-sustaining technique is so valuable that virtually all medical personnel, as well as concerned members of the public, should be certified and routinely recertified in its application. Question: what does the professor imply about the utility of CPR training? What can happen if the hands are placed too low on the sternum when performing CPR? Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an astronomy class. An association is a group of extremely young stars, typically containing 5 to 50 hot, bright stars scattered over a region of space some 100 to 500 light-years in diameter. As an example, most of the stars in the constellation Orion form one of the nearest stellar associations. Associations also contain hundreds to thousands of low-mass stars, but these are much harder to see. The presence of really hot and bright stars indicates that star formation in the association has occurred in the last million years or so. Since O stars, stars that are over 1,000,000 times brighter than our own sun, go through their entire lives in only about 1,000,000 years, they would not still be around unless star formation occurred recently. It is therefore not surprising that associations are found in regions rich in the gas and dust required to form new stars. It's like a brand new building still surrounded by some of the construction materials used to build it, and with the landscape still showing signs of construction. Question: what is the professor implying when she says this? It's like a brand new building still surrounded by some of the construction materials used to build it, and with the landscape still showing signs of construction. What are O stars? Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an astronomy class. Born in 1910 in India, Subrahmanyan Chandrasekhar, known as Chandra to his friends and colleagues, grew up in a home that encouraged scholarship and an interest in science. His uncle, C.V. Raman, was a physicist who won the 1930 Nobel Prize. As a precocious student, Chandra tried to read as much as he could about the latest ideas in physics and astronomy, although obtaining technical books was not easy in India at the time. He finished college at age 19 and won a scholarship to study in England. It was during the long boat voyage to get to graduate school that he first began doing calculations about the structure of white dwarf stars. Chandra developed his ideas during and after his studies as a graduate student, showing that white dwarfs with masses greater than 1.4 times the mass of the Sun cannot exist. His calculations soon brought him into conflict with certain distinguished astronomers, including Sir Arthur Eddington, who publicly ridiculed Chandra's ideas. At a number of meetings of astronomers, such leaders in the field as Henry Norris Russell refused to give Chandra the opportunity to defend his ideas, while allowing his more senior critics lots of time to criticize them. Yet Chandra persevered, writing books and articles about his theories, which turned out not only to be correct, but to lay the foundation for much of our modern understanding of the death of stars. In 1983, he received the Nobel Prize in Physics for this early work. Question: why does the professor mention other astronomers such as Sir Arthur Eddington and Henry Norris Russell? Why does the professor say this? In 1983, he received the Nobel Prize in Physics for this early work. Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an astronomy class. Now, a supernova is basically when a star explodes. It occurs during the last stage of a star's life and usually only occurs in large stars like white dwarfs. While these stellar explosions may appear beautiful to spectators on Earth, they also have terrible consequences for nearby stars and planets. Now, suppose a life form has the misfortune to develop around a star that happens to lie near a massive star destined to become a supernova. Such life forms may find themselves extinct when the harsh radiation and high energy particles from the neighboring star's explosion reach their world. Life may well have formed around a number of pleasantly stable stars, only to be wiped out because a massive nearby star suddenly went supernova. Just as children born in a war zone may find themselves the unjust victims of their violent neighborhood, life too close to a star that goes supernova may fall prey to having been born in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, what is a safe distance to be from a supernova explosion? Now, a lot depends on the violence of the particular explosion, what type of supernova it is, and what level of destruction we are willing to accept. Calculations suggest that a supernova less than 50 light-years away from us would certainly end all life on Earth, and that even 100 light-years away would have drastic consequences for the radiation levels here. One minor extinction of sea creatures about 2 million years ago on Earth may actually have been caused by a supernova at a distance of about 120 light-years. Now, the good news is that there are, at present, no massive stars that promise to become supernova within 50 light-years of the Sun. Question: according to the professor, what may have caused the extinction of sea creatures about 2 million years ago? Why does the professor say this? Just as children born in a war zone may find themselves the unjust victims of their violent neighborhood, life too close to a star that goes supernova may fall prey to having been born in the wrong place at the wrong time. Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an astronomy class. Although many supernova explosions in our own galaxy have gone unnoticed, a few were so spectacular that they were clearly seen and recorded by sky watchers and historians at the time. We can use these records, going back 2,000 years, to help us pinpoint where the exploding stars were and thus where to look for their remnants today. The most dramatic supernova was observed in the year 1006. It appeared in May as a brilliant point of light visible during the daytime, perhaps 100 times brighter than the planet Venus. It was bright enough to cast shadows on the ground during the night and was recorded with amazement and fear by observers all over Europe and Asia. No one had seen anything like it before. Astronomers David Clark and Richard Stevenson have looked through records from around the world to find more than 20 reports of the 1006 supernova. This has allowed them to determine with some accuracy where in the sky the explosion occurred. They place it in the modern constellation of Lupus. At roughly the position they have determined, we find a supernova remnant, now quite faint. From the way its materials are expanding, it indeed appears to be about 1,000 years old. Question: what is the lecture mainly about? What is implied by the professor about supernovas? Directions. Now listen to a part of a talk in an astronomy class. Most stars end their lives as stars known as white dwarfs or neutron stars. Now, when a very massive star ends its life, not even the repulsion between densely packed neutrons can support the core against its own weight. if the remaining mass of the star's core is more than about 3 times that of the Sun, scientific theory predicts that no known force can stop it from collapsing forever. Gravity simply overwhelms all other forces and crushes the middle of the star until it occupies a small area. Now, a star in which this occurs may become one of the strangest objects ever predicted by theory, a black hole. To understand what a black hole is like and how it influences its surroundings, we need a theory that can describe the action of gravity under such extreme circumstances. To date, our best theory of gravity is the general theory of relativity, which was put forward in 1916 by Albert Einstein. Question 1. What does the professor imply about black holes? Why does the professor say this? Now, when a very massive star ends its life, not even the repulsion between densely packed neutrons can support the core against its own weight. Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a chemistry class. Now, when a liquid vaporizes in a closed container, gas molecules cannot escape. As these gas phase molecules move randomly about, they will occasionally collide with the surface of molecules of the condensed phase, and in some cases, these collisions will result in the molecules re-entering the condensed phase. The change from the gas phase to the liquid is called condensation. Now, when the rate of condensation becomes equal to the rate of vaporization, neither the amount of the liquid nor the amount of the vapor in the container changes. The vapor in the container is then said to be in equilibrium with the liquid. Keep in mind that this is not a static situation, as molecules are continually exchanged between the condensed and gaseous phases. Question: what is the lecture mainly about? What is the definition of condensation? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a chemistry class. So, decompression sickness, or the bends, is an effect of the increased pressure of the air inhaled by scuba divers when swimming underwater at considerable depths. In addition to the pressure exerted by the atmosphere, divers are subjected to additional pressure due to the water above them. Therefore, the air inhaled by a diver while submerged contains gases that exist at higher levels of pressure within the water, and these gases dissolve into the diver's blood. Now, as the diver ascends to the surface of the water, the pressure of the water decreases. If the ascent is too rapid, the gases escaping from the diver's blood may form bubbles that can cause a variety of symptoms, ranging from rashes and joint pain to paralysis and death. To avoid decompression sickness, divers must ascend from depths at relatively slow speeds, about 10 or 20 meters per minute, or otherwise make several decompression stops, pausing for several minutes at given depths during the ascent. Question: what is the lecture mainly about? What happens if a diver ascends to the water's surface too rapidly? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a chemistry class. Cooking is essentially synthetic chemistry that happens to be safe to eat. There are a number of examples of acid-based chemistry in the culinary world. One example is putting lemon juice or vinegar, both of which are acids, on cooked fish. Now, it turns out that fish have volatile amines in their system, which are neutralized by the acidic lemon or vinegar. This reduces the odor of the fish and also adds a sour taste that we seem to enjoy. Pickling is a method of preserving vegetables using a naturally produced acidic environment. The vegetable, such as a cucumber, is placed in a sealed jar submerged in a brine solution. The brine solution favors the growth of beneficial bacteria and suppresses the growth of harmful bacteria. The beneficial bacteria feed on starches in the cucumber and produce lactic acid as a waste product in a process called fermentation. Now, the lactic acid eventually increases the acidity of the brine to a level that kills any harmful bacteria. Without the harmful bacteria consuming the cucumbers, they are able to last much longer than if they were unprotected. The pickling process ultimately changes the flavor of the vegetables, making them taste sour. Question: why does the professor discuss putting lemon or vinegar on fish? What is implied about pickling from the lecture? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a chemistry class. The mining of seawater for magnesium, formulation of over-the-counter medicines such as antacids, and treating the presence of minerals in your home's water supply are just a few of the many tasks that involve controlling the equilibrium between a slightly soluble ionic solid and an aqueous solution of its ions. Now, I know that sounds rather complicated, but let me explain. In some cases, we want to prevent dissolution from occurring. Tooth decay, for example, occurs when the calcium in our teeth dissolves. The dissolution process is aided when bacteria in our mouth feasts on the sugars in our diets to produce lactic acid, which reacts with calcium. Now, preventing this dissolution prevents tooth decay. On the other hand, sometimes we want a substance to dissolve. We want the calcium carbonate in a chewable antacid, the kind you may take when you have a stomachache. We want this antacid to dissolve because the ions produced in this process help soothe an upset stomach. Question: why does the professor discuss tooth decay? Why does the professor say this? The mining of seawater for magnesium, formulation of over-the-counter medicines such as antacids, and treating the presence of minerals in your home's water supply are just a few of the many tasks that involve controlling the equilibrium between a slightly soluble ionic solid and an aqueous solution of its ions. Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a chemistry class. Now, scientists discovered that naturally fluorinated water could be beneficial to your teeth, and so it became common practice to add fluoride to drinking water. Toothpastes and mouthwashes also contain amounts of fluoride. Unfortunately, excess fluoride can negate its advantages. Natural sources of drinking water in various parts of the world have varying concentrations of fluoride, and places where that concentration is high are prone to certain health risks where there is no other source of drinking water. The most serious side effect of excess fluoride is the bone disease skeletal fluorosis. When excess fluoride is in the body, it can cause the joints to stiffen and the bones to thicken. It can severely impact mobility and can negatively affect the thyroid gland. Skeletal fluorosis is a condition that over 2.7 million people suffer from across the world. Question: what is the professor mainly discussing? What does the professor imply about fluoride? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a psychology class. All right, now, social psychologists have documented that feeling good about ourselves and maintaining positive self-esteem is a powerful motivator of human behavior. In the United States, members of the predominant culture typically think very highly of themselves and view themselves as good people who are above average on many desirable traits. Often, our behavior, attitudes, and beliefs are affected when we experience a threat to our self-esteem or positive self-image. Back in the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger defined cognitive dissonance as psychological discomfort arising from holding two or more inconsistent attitudes, thoughts, beliefs, or opinions. Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance states that when we experience a conflict in our behaviors, attitudes, or beliefs that runs counter to our positive self-perceptions, we experience psychological discomfort. For example, if you believe smoking is bad for your health, but you continue to smoke, you experience conflict between your belief and behavior. Question: why does the professor discuss people from the United States? Why does the professor say this? For example, if you believe smoking is bad for your health, but you continue to smoke, you experience conflict between your belief and behavior. Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a psychology class. So, researchers have tested many persuasion strategies that are effective in selling products and changing people's attitude, ideas, and behaviors. One effective strategy is the foot in the door technique. Using the foot in the door technique, the persuader gets a person to agree to a small favor or to buy a small item, only to later request a larger favor or purchase of a bigger item. The foot in the door technique was demonstrated in a study by Friedman and Fraser in the 1960s, in which participants who agreed to post a small sign in their yard or sign a petition were more likely to agree to put a large sign in their yard than people who declined the first request. Research on this technique also illustrates the principle of consistency. Our past behavior often directs our future behavior, and we have a desire to maintain consistency once we have committed to a behavior. A common application of foot in the door is when teens ask their parents for a small permission and then asking them for something larger. Having granted the smaller request increases the likelihood that parents will acquiesce with the later, larger request. So, how would a store owner use the foot in the door technique to sell you an expensive product? For example, say that you're buying the latest model smartphone, and the salesperson suggests you purchase the best data plan. You agree to this. The salesperson then suggests a bigger purchase, the 3-year extended warranty. After agreeing to the smaller request, you are more likely to also agree to the larger request. You may have encountered this if you have bought a car. When salespeople realize that a buyer intends to purchase a certain model, they might try to get the customer to pay for many additional features like leather seating. Question: how did Friedman and Fraser demonstrate the foot in the door technique? Why does the professor say this? How would a store owner use the foot in the door technique to sell you an expensive product? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a psychology class. In normative social influence, people conform to the group norm to fit in, to feel good, and to be accepted by the group. However, with informational social influence, people conform because they believe the group is competent and has the correct information, particularly when the task or situation is ambiguous. In one famous study, known as the Asch Conformity Studies, participants were placed together in a room and asked to look at a drawing of a clear and simple straight line. The participants in the study did not have to rely on the group for information. Anyone who saw the picture knew it was a straight line. So, when the other participants, who were secretly researchers taking part of the study, all agreed that the line was a curved line and not a straight line, one studied participant actually agreed with the other people in the group, even though it was clear that they were wrong. In other words, participants complied to fit in and avoid ridicule, an instance of normative social influence. An example of informational social influence may be what to do in an emergency situation. Now imagine you're in a movie theater watching a film and what seems to be smoke comes in the theater from under the emergency exit door. You are not certain that it is smoke. It may be a special effect for the movie, such as a fog machine. When you are uncertain, you will tend to look at the behavior of others in the theater. If other people show concern and get up to leave, you are likely to do the same. However, if others seem unconcerned, you are likely to stay put and continue watching the movie. Question: why does the professor mention the Asch Conformity Studies? Based on the information from the listening, indicate which characteristic on the left belongs to either normative social influence or informational social influence. Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a psychology class. Now, humans engage in aggression when they seek to cause harm or pain to another person. Aggression takes two forms depending on one's motives: hostile or instrumental. Hostile aggression is motivated by feelings of anger with intent to cause pain. A fight in a bar with a stranger is an example of hostile aggression. In contrast, instrumental aggression is motivated by achieving a goal and does not necessarily involve intent to cause pain. A contract killer who murders for hire displays instrumental aggression. Now, there are many different theories as to why aggression exists in the first place. Some researchers argue that aggression serves an evolutionary function. Men are more likely than women to show aggression. From the perspective of evolutionary psychology, human male aggression, like that in non-human primates, likely serves to display dominance over other males, both to protect a mate and to perpetuate the male's genes. Sexual jealousy is part of male aggression. Males endeavor to make sure their mates are not copulating with other males, thus ensuring their own paternity of the female's offspring. Although aggression provides an obvious evolutionary advantage for men, women also engage in aggression. Women typically display instrumental forms of aggression, with their aggression serving as a means to an end. For example, women may express their aggression covertly, for example, by communication that impairs the social standing of another person. Question: based on the information from the listening, indicate which characteristic on the left belongs to either hostile aggression or instrumental aggression. What is implied when the professor says this? Some researchers argue that aggression serves an evolutionary function. Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a psychology class. With the rapid growth of technology and widely available mobile technology and social networking media, a new form of bullying has emerged: cyberbullying. Cyberbullying, like bullying, is repeated behavior that is intended to cause psychological or emotional harm to another person. Now, what is unique about cyberbullying is that it is typically covert, concealed, done in private, and the bully can remain anonymous. This anonymity gives the bully power, and the victim may feel helpless, unable to escape the harassment, and unable to retaliate. Cyberbullying can take many forms, including harassing a victim by spreading rumors, creating a website defaming the victim, and ignoring, insulting, laughing at, or teasing the victim. In cyberbullying, it is more common for girls to be the bullies and victims because cyberbullying is non-physical and is a less direct form of bullying. Interestingly, girls who become cyberbullies often have been the victims of cyberbullying at one time. The effects of cyberbullying are just as harmful as traditional bullying and include the victim feeling frustration, anger, sadness, helplessness, powerlessness, and fear. Victims will also experience lower self-esteem. Furthermore, recent research suggests that both cyberbullying victims and perpetrators are more likely to have ideas of suicide, and they are more likely to attempt suicide than individuals who have no experience with cyberbullying. Question: what is the professor's opinion of cyberbullying? Why are girls more likely to engage in cyberbullying? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a sociology class. Now, caste systems are closed stratification systems in which people can do little or nothing to change their social standing. People are born into their social standing and will remain in it their whole lives. Individuals are assigned occupations regardless of their talents, interests, or potential. There are virtually no opportunities to improve one's social position. In the Hindu caste tradition, people were expected to work in the occupation of their caste and to enter into marriage according to their caste. Accepting this social standing was considered a moral duty. Cultural values reinforced the system. Caste systems promote beliefs in fate, destiny, and the will of a higher power, rather than promoting individual freedom as a value. A person who lived in a caste society was raised to accept his or her social standing. Now, although the caste system in India has been officially dismantled, its residual presence in Indian society is deeply embedded. In rural areas, aspects of the tradition are more likely to remain, while urban centers show less evidence of this past. In India's larger cities, people now have more opportunities to choose their own career paths and marriage partners. As a global center of employment, corporations have introduced merit-based hiring and employment to the nation. Question: which is considered part of the Hindu caste tradition? What is the professor's attitude towards the caste tradition? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a sociology class. Ageism is discrimination based on age. Ageist attitudes and biases based on stereotypes reduce elderly people to inferior or limited positions. When ageism is reflected in the workplace, in healthcare, and in assisted living facilities, the effects of discrimination can be more severe. Ageism can make older people fear losing a job, feel dismissed by a doctor, or feel a lack of power and control in their daily living situations. Now, in early societies, the elderly were respected and revered. Many pre-industrial societies observed gerontocracy, a type of social structure wherein the power is held by a society's oldest members. In some countries today, the elderly still have influence and power, and their vast knowledge is respected. In many modern nations, however, industrialization contributed to the diminished social standing of the elderly. In agrarian societies, a married couple cared for their aging parents. The oldest members of the family contributed to the household by doing chores, cooking, and helping with childcare. As economics shifted from agrarian to industrial, younger generations moved to cities to work in factories. The elderly began to be seen as an expensive burden. They did not have the strength and stamina to work outside the home. What began during industrialization, a trend toward older people living apart from their grown children, has become commonplace. Question: what is the lecture mainly about? What was the role of elderly in agrarian societies? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a sociology class. Americans typically equate marriages with monogamy, when someone is married to only one person at a time. In many countries and cultures around the world, however, having one spouse is not the only form of marriage. In a majority of cultures, 78% actually, polygamy, or being married to more than one person at a time, is accepted, with most polygamous societies existing in Northern Africa and East Asia. Now, instances of polygamy are almost exclusively in the form of polygyny. Polygyny refers to a man being married to more than one woman at the same time. The reverse, when a woman is married to more than one man at the same time, is called polyandry. It is far less common and only occurs in about 1% of the world's cultures. The reasons for the overwhelming prevalence of polygamous societies are varied, but they often include issues of population growth, religious ideologies, and social status. Question: why does the professor say this? Americans typically equate marriages with monogamy, when someone is married to only one person at a time. Why does the professor discuss the difference between polygyny and polyandry? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a sociology class. Throughout history and in societies across the world, leaders have used religious narratives, symbols, and traditions in an attempt to give more meaning to life and understand the universe. Some form of religion is found in every known culture, and it is usually practiced in a public way by a group. Now, while some people think of religion as something individual because religious beliefs can be highly personal, religion is also a social institution. Social scientists recognize that religion exists as an organized and integrated set of beliefs, behaviors, and norms centered on basic social needs and values. Moreover, religion is a cultural universal found in all social groups. For instance, in every culture, funeral rites are practiced in some way, although these customs vary between cultures and within religious affiliations. Despite differences, there are common elements in a ceremony marking a person's death, such as announcement of the death, care of the deceased, and ceremony or ritual. These universals and the differences in how societies and individuals experience religion provide rich material for sociological study. Question: what is the lecture mainly about? Why does the professor discuss funeral rites? Directions. Now listen to part of a talk in a sociology class. So, as already mentioned, education is not solely concerned with the basic academic concepts that a student learns in the classroom. Societies also educate their children outside of the school system in matters of everyday practical living. These two types of learning are referred to as formal education and informal education. Now, formal education describes the learning of academic facts and concepts through a formal curriculum. Arising from the tutelage of ancient Greek thinkers, centuries of scholars have examined topics through formalized methods of learning. Education in earlier times was only available to the higher classes. They had the means for access to scholarly materials, plus the luxury of leisure time that could be used for learning. The Industrial Revolution and its accompanying social changes made education more accessible to the general population. Many families in the emerging middle class found new opportunities for schooling. The modern U.S. educational system is the result of this progression. Today, basic education is considered a right and responsibility for all citizens. Expectations of this system focus on formal education, with curricula and testing designed to ensure that students learn the facts and concepts that society believes are basic knowledge. In contrast, informal education describes learning about cultural values, norms, and expected behaviors by participating in a society. This type of learning occurs both through the formal education system and at home. Our earliest learning experiences generally happen via parents, relatives, and others in our community. Through informal education, we learn how to dress for different occasions, how to perform regular life routines like shopping for and preparing food, and how to keep our bodies clean. Question: what is the professor's opinion of informal education? What is implied about informal education from the lecture?
All right, cue the applause. You have made it to the end. Congratulations. So many other things you could be doing besides studying for the TOEFL. Not an easy or fun thing to do, really, but you did it. Congrats. Check out our site, tstprep.com. We have more practice tests, teachers, all that kind of TOEFL stuff. Visit us, check it out, and also please subscribe. I would be happy if you subscribed. All right, that's it. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Part 2 coming next week. All right, take care, guys.